Hey everyone, Jimmy here. It's so good to virtually see you all. I know I can't actually see you, but you can at least see me, what more do you need? I hope you all are doing well at home, enjoying time with family. I am here on my balcony today. It is a great day. I'm so thankful that I have this spot to come outside because I do spend a lot more time inside now, but I can at least be out here. Hey, I wanted to talk to you about our Bible story today. So in class, for the past few months, we've been kind of going through the Bible and learning different stories. So we started in Genesis with creation, learned about how God created the world, and learned about other things such as the flood, Abraham, some of his sons. You know some of those names. And then we moved on to some of the judges that we had and talked about what the judges did. We talked about our formula that introduced a judge to the story about how Israel, God's people, were not necessarily doing what God wanted, so God needed to send a judge in order to convey God's message. And then we've gotten to kings, so we talked about our King Saul, we talked about King David, and then most recently we talked about King Solomon, who built the temple, so hopefully you remember that. But even when I was your age, I always thought about these stories, and these are the stories I remember, but I always thought, now, how do we move from a king who builds a temple to Jesus? Like, what happens in between? There's all these little books in our Old Testament, and we call those the prophets. There's major prophets, which are larger books. There's minor prophets in there, which are smaller books. You can read some of them. They're like a chapter or two, some of them. But I always thought, like, what is going on with Israel during this time? Well, what this time is known as the exile. And pretty soon after Solomon, our King Solomon, dies and his son ascends to the throne, things begin to go really bad for the people of Israel. And they just continue to get worse and worse and worse with each generation. And so the people of Israel are pushed into exile. And what that means is what we'll be talking about today. So enjoy this next video. I hope you all are doing well. Miss you so much and hope to see you soon.
My B-I-B-L-E, and this is what it says to me. It tells me that I'm never ever alone. I'm learning how Jesus came down to us and gave his best. Without a doubt the best friend you'll ever know. Our God knows exactly what I need, so I remember this. Let's go! When you ask, he cares. When you see, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. When you ask, he cares. When you see, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. Oh, oh. I'm reading my B-I-B-L-E, and this is what it says to me. It tells me that I'm never ever alone. I'm learning how Jesus came down to us and gave his best. Without a doubt, the best friend you'll ever know. God knows exactly what I need, so I remember this. Let's go! When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. God knows exactly what I need, so I remember this. Let's go! When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door. When you ask, he cares. When you seek, he's there. When you knock, 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 God opens up the door.
This is the desert. Well, a little piece of it. The desert is a dangerous place. There's not much food, and there's not much water. Sometimes people die here. The wind blows and changes the shape of the desert. It's never the same place twice, and so sometimes people can get lost. During the day, the sun beats down and burns the skin, so people wear heavy clothing in the desert. Sometimes the wind blows the sand and it stings the face and skin. People need protection from the cold at night in the desert. People don't go to the desert unless they absolutely have to. Here is Jerusalem. Here are the walls, and inside the wall is the temple. Here are the people of God. Now, the people of God knew that God would be present with them in the temple, but they had come to believe that this was the only place they could pray to God. The people also believed that these walls could protect them from anything. And then the Assyrians came, and they fought with the people. It was hard. Some people starved. Some people even died. But the Assyrians went away. But then the Babylonians came, and they did not go away. They tore down the walls, and they burned the temple, and they marched the people of God away from Jerusalem in chains. Only a few people remained in the city. The people would look back at Jerusalem, their burning city, and wonder if they would ever see it again. The people had to go to sleep when the soldiers said, and they had to get up when the soldiers said. They could only eat when the soldiers said. And they had to walk when the soldiers told them to. They could not go back to Jerusalem. They were in exile. The people had hung their harps on the weeping willow trees, and they sang sad songs. The people even began to turn toward Jerusalem when they said their prayers. But soon, they came to realize that when they would say their prayers together, that God was in this place too. Now, the king of Babylon let life go on somewhat normally when they were there. Some set up shops, and life went on. Everyone was surprised when the king of Persia came and took Babylon for himself. And that king let the people go back. Now, some of them returned to Jerusalem with the prophet Ezra. And this group began to rebuild the temple. some returned with the prophet Nehemiah. And this group began to rebuild the city walls. But something strange happened. Not everyone returned from Babylon. Some decided to stay there because they were no longer in exile, because God is here too.
Good morning, friends. I miss you. I was at church for a little bit this week, and I was lucky enough that I got to see JC and Mariah scootering around, but it was very lonely downstairs. The classrooms were empty, and I miss your voices and your stories. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit before we end our kids' church today about the lesson. Mr. Jimmy did such a great job in the beginning, reminding us of where the people of God have been in this journey and how God was forming his people to be reflections of him in the world. And today's story, we learned that their temple, where they believed that God was destroyed, and the people of God were made to leave their home, and they weren't allowed to come back to their home. And that was called exile. But then the people of God realized that even in exile, that God was with them. And so some of the people came back with Nehemiah and came back with Ezra. But some people stayed in Babylon because they knew that God was with them. And I was reminded of that this week, that even though we're kind of in an opposite exile, aren't we? We're not made to leave our home and not be able to come back, but we're made to stay in our home and not be able to go places, aren't we? So I was thinking about that because we are not able to worship or go to church with our friends the way that we're used to finding and seeing God in that space. So I was reminded today about where is God when we can't go to church? But as we see from this story, that all of God is everywhere, that God is always with us, no matter where we go and no matter where we are. And that the church is not a building, right? But the church is, by God's loving grace, who we are becoming, right? The church is us, a people. So this week, I want you to remember that God is near to you. And even though we cannot go to church and do the things that we are used to doing, to being close to God, that we can become close to God too. Because the good news is, and like one of my kids said to me, is God can't catch the coronavirus, can he? No, he can't. So we don't have to stay 6 feet away from God. We can be close to God, as close as he is to us. And how do we do that? We can read the Bible. We can watch kids' church. We can talk with people that we love, just like the questions that you just asked with your family. We can also draw pictures and be creative using the gifts that he gave us. But all these ways we can be close to God and still be becoming the people that he wants us to become. All right, I love you. God bless you, and I will see you soon.